The hand that strikes in arrogance seldom sees the shadow behind it. In moments of triumph, when a nation feels emboldened by its own might, there lies a dangerous silence. That silence is not peace. It is not respect. It is the quiet murmur of consequences gathering in the distance. Israel, in its decision to attack Syria, may have believed it was acting in the name of strength, in the defense of its sovereignty, or perhaps in the pursuit of dominance. But strength without wisdom is a fragile illusion, one that cracks not from the outside but from within. The world has seen this pattern before, empires blinded by their own brilliance, only to stumble in the shadows they refuse to acknowledge. To act without foresight is not courage, it is impatience disguised as power. When pride is the compass, the direction is often misguided. In launching strikes upon Syrian soil, Israel did more than light a fuse, it sent tremors through a region already trembling. Syria is not a silent land, it is a place layered in history, resistance, suffering, and strength. To strike it carelessly is to awaken not just its own grief, but the watchful eyes of those who stand behind it. Russia and Iran are not idle witnesses. They are nations with memories long and patience deep. They do not move in haste, but when they do move, they move with purpose. This is the moment when we must learn. This is where we must open our eyes not only to what is done, but to why it was done, and what it may become. A miscalculation at this scale is not just a national blunder, it is a moral one. It tells us how easily a nation, or a person can fall prey to the illusion that force guarantees peace. But force, untempered by compassion and understanding, only breeds more conflict. It is not strength that should guide decisions, it is clarity. It is not dominance that sustains a future, it is dignity. The danger of power is not in having it, the danger is in believing it makes one invincible. Israel, with its advanced systems and strong alliances, may appear unshakable. But history does not favor appearances, it favors actions. It favors the wisdom to pause when one can strike. It favors the humility to listen when one can speak. It favors the courage to seek understanding rather than submission. And so we must ask, what is the real cost of a decision born of pride? Is it the retaliation that follows? The lives lost in the back-and-forth exchange of missiles and warnings? Or is it something even deeper? The erosion of trust, the dimming of hope, the sense that peace may never find ground to grow. When we act without empathy, we build walls instead of bridges, and when a nation forgets that its power must serve more than itself, it risks isolating its people not just from others, but from their own humanity. Let this not be a tale of fire and fallout. Let this be a turning point. Let the world witness not just the fallout of arrogance, but the opportunity for awakening. The hand that struck may have trembled in false confidence, but the heart that reflects has the chance to lead in truth. May we all in our lives and in our nations learn not to walk blindly into shadows, but to let humility light the way forward. The winds do not favor the reckless. Nature in its infinite rhythm teaches us this truth again and again. Storms do not come without warning. They gather over time, responding to pressure, imbalance, and disruption. Likewise, in the realm of geopolitics and war, no retaliation arrives unprovoked. Israel's aggressive posture towards Syria may have been framed as strategic, defensive, or necessary, but the winds of consequence do not listen to justifications. They respond to intent, and they magnify the repercussions of arrogance. In the pursuit of quick victories and political statements, a nation often forgets that even the most precise missile can miscalculate the strength of those it awakens. Syria is not a vacuum. It is not a land that simply absorbs damage and remains still. Behind its borders are alliances forged not by convenience, but by history, ideology, and shared resistance. Russia, a nation patient but watchful, has stood alongside Syria with more than just words. Iran, driven by deep regional and religious ties, sees the suffering of Syria not just as collateral damage, but as a wound upon its own dignity. Israel, in misjudging the implications of its attack, failed to account for the depth of these bonds. It struck not one target but many, each layered with significance, and each capable of striking back with equal if not greater force. This moment is not merely about rockets and radar systems. It is about the age-old lesson that haste is the companion of regret. Nations that act with fury often forget to measure the horizon. They assume that their air superiority, their alliances, their global voice will shield them from retribution. But the winds of justice are not always visible. They are not always immediate, yet they are always moving. The more reckless the act, the more certain the response. And sometimes that response does not roar. It builds slowly, gathering strength across borders and minds until it becomes undeniable.
Just as the seas punish the overconfident sailor, geopolitics punishes the short-sighted strategist. The decisions made in closed rooms, where maps are drawn and targets circled, may seem clinical and calculated. But when these decisions ignore the storm building beyond those walls, they become dangerous. Israel's boldness may have played well to certain allies, perhaps even to domestic audiences seeking strength, but it underestimated the emotional currency of pain in Syria, in Iran, and in Russia. Pain that transforms into resolve. Resolve that translates into missiles. Missiles that don't just retaliate, they reshape landscapes, both literal and political. The world does not need another trigger-happy state pretending its aggression is diplomacy. It needs nations that understand that restraint is not weakness, that caution is not cowardice, that choosing not to strike can be the highest form of leadership. The winds that once carried power now carry resistance. Resistance that is smarter, more coordinated, and backed by nations no longer afraid of global consequences. The age of unilateral actions without backlash is over. In its place is a multipolar world, where every blow lands with a heavier echo than before. So the lesson is clear, not just to Israel, but to all who walk the edge of conflict believing they can outrun the storm. The winds do not favor the reckless. They favor the wise, the measured, the ones who understand that power is not what you use first, it is what you hold back. Let this be a moment of awakening. Before the winds become a whirlwind, may we all learn to listen to their warnings and realign our sails before it's too late. Tel Aviv may glitter with power, but glitter is not gold when missiles loom over skies. A city may shine with prosperity, its skyline rising in defiance of time and tension, but even the most fortified walls cannot protect against the consequences of provocation. Israel, bold in its action against Syria, may have measured the immediate tactical gain, but it did not account for the ripples it would send through the hearts of its adversaries. The belief that strength alone can shield one from response is a dangerous delusion. It is a lesson that history has carved into the memory of empires past. When you strike, you awaken, and what has now been awakened is neither small nor scattered. It is deliberate, it is focused, and it is prepared. The streets of Damascus may have been quiet, suffering in silence beneath the weight of years of war, but that silence has always held something deeper. Not fear, not surrender, but resolve. The kind of resolve born not from wealth or weapons, but from survival. Syria has endured what few others could. It has watched as bombs turned homes to dust, as alliances shifted like sand, and yet it still stands. To strike such a place and expect no consequences to misunderstand the nature of endurance. Endurance does not fade, it gathers, it sharpens, and when the time comes, it responds not with noise, but with precision. Iran too does not raise its voice in vain. It moves with meaning. It does not forget, nor does it forgive without first weighing the cost. Its warnings are not theater, they are calculus. Its alliances with Syria and support from actors like Hezbollah are not for show. They are pieces on a board far larger than any one battlefield. And when Tel Aviv becomes the target, it is not an act of madness. It is a reply, a language of force, spoken fluently by those who have tasted war and remembered its bitter grammar. Russia, standing behind Syria like a shadow that stretches across continents, sees the situation with cold clarity. It watches the moves of NATO, the ambitions of Washington, and the confidence of Tel Aviv, not with awe, but with strategy. To provoke Syria is to test Russia's patience, and patience, when exhausted, becomes power. Israel may calculate that Russia will hesitate, that Iran will posture without acting, that Syria is too weakened to respond. But misreading silence as submission is how great mistakes are made. In life, as in war, we often confuse the quiet with the weak, but there is a quiet that comes before the rise, a breath before the blow. Tel Aviv, radiant and confident, must now face this truth. The sky above it may soon be filled with more than just stars, and its leaders must confront a question more pressing than any policy debate. What happens when those you once ignored begin to answer you in kind? Stillness does not mean surrender. It never has. Whether in the heart of a wounded nation or the soul of a person who's been wronged, stillness is often the moment when strength is reborn. It is the final inhale before action, and when that action comes, it comes with the weight of every silent moment before it. Tel Aviv, and the world watching, would do well to remember this, not because retaliation is noble, but because provocation is never free. This is not merely a warning to one city or one state. It is a message to every power that moves without reflection. When you believe you are too powerful to fall, you've already begun to. The quiet ones are rising, not with vengeance, but with purpose and stillness. Real stillness is never the end. It is the signal that something greater is on its way. All missiles fade, all invasions blur, but truth, it lingers. In the midst of chaos, when skies burn and ground trembles, there exists a force stronger than any weapon, the undeniable power of truth. Israel's actions in Syria may dominate headlines, may even yield short-term strategic advantage, but the legacy of violence does not lie in the strength of the strike. It lies in the truth that remains after the dust has settled. And that truth, however inconvenient, has a way of piercing through noise, exposing the intentions behind the act, and calling the world to attention. Truth cannot be covered by propaganda or hidden behind politics for long. It lives in the eyes of displaced families, in the voices of children who wake up to the sound of warplanes, in the silence of mothers who bury their sons without answers. The missiles may be manufactured in factories, guided by advanced systems, and launched by trained hands, but the stories they destroy are not made of steel. They are made of spirit, and spirit, once fractured, does not forget. It remembers. It carries forward the truth of what was done, why it was done, and who allowed it. Israel may argue defense, necessity, or deterrence, but the world, slowly and inevitably, begins to ask deeper questions. Was this truly defense, or was it dominance? Was it a preemptive strike, or was it provocation? Who benefits from these actions? Who suffers in silence? The truth lies not in the declarations of governments, but in the wake of destruction. It lies in the broken hospitals of Aleppo, in the shattered mosques of Homs, in the homes reduced to rubble across Syria. These ruins speak louder than official statements, and what they say is simple. The truth cannot be bombed into silence. In the grand theater of global politics, many try to stage illusions. They dress aggression as heroism, cloak violations in the language of democracy, and justify every invasion with the rhetoric of fear. But illusions fade. They always do. What endures is the truth, the slow, patient, relentless truth that reveals the cost of every choice. And in this case, the cost may yet be too high for anyone to bear. For every missile launched in blindness, a generation is awakened with sight. For every building leveled in arrogance, a resolve is built in humility. We must ask ourselves, what is the legacy we wish to leave? Do we wish to be remembered as those who inflicted suffering without care, or as those who paused, who questioned, who dared to see the humanity in others, even our so-called enemies? It is easy to dehumanize. It is easy to reduce nations to targets, to reduce lives to statistics. But the truth does not allow us to remain comfortable in that ease. It pushes us to see beyond flags, beyond borders, beyond ideology. It demands we see the people, the real people, who bear the consequences of powerful decisions. Missiles rust, maps change, leaders fall, but truth remains. It lives in documentation, in memories, in whispered prayers beneath fallen roofs, and in time, that truth will rise. It will speak through poets, through survivors, through brave voices who refuse to let injustice be forgotten. And when it does, no power will be great enough to silence it. So let us not seek to outgun the world. Let us not aim to outshout our critics. Let us seek instead to outlive our mistakes by facing them with honesty. Let us allow truth to guide us, even when it is painful. Because only in truth can there be real peace. Only in truth can healing begin. And only in truth can we find a strength greater than any weapon, the strength to change. In the theater of war, many play hero, but few choose to be healers. The battlefield is loud. It is a place of pride, of flags waving high, of generals boasting strategy and dominance. But when the dust settles, when the roar of jets fades, and the rubble is still, it is not the conqueror who holds the future. It is the one who rebuilds, who forgives, who connects. Israel's choices, and the chain of responses they have set into motion, are more than just tactical moves. They are a reflection of what kind of world we are shaping, a world driven by vengeance, or one sustained by vision. And in this pivotal moment, the strongest soul will not be the one who retaliates with greater force, but the one who reaches across the fire with purpose and humility. The strength to connect in a time of hostility is greater than any arsenal. To choose dialogue over domination, empathy over escalation, is not the path of the weak, it is the path of the wise. Iran may possess missiles, Russia may deploy strategies, Syria may harbor pain too deep for words, and yet within all three, and even within Israel, exists a deeper possibility, the choice to disrupt the cycle. Retaliation is expected, healing is revolutionary. The world has seen enough of destruction. It has memorized the choreography of war. But what we need now, more than ever, is the courage to break that rhythm. The strongest soul does not conquer lands, it conquers the space between hearts. When Tel Aviv braces for potential retaliation, when Tehran plans its response, when Damascus mourns its latest loss, somewhere in those shadows walks a person unseen who believes peace is still possible, not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because it is necessary. That person is not a general, nor a president. That person may be a mother, a student, a displaced father, or a grieving widow. They carry no weapon, yet they carry the future. For it is always the ordinary people, the ones who pay the highest cost, who understand that the only victory worth chasing is one that brings people back together. We must reject the idea that showing strength means showing violence. We must redefine strength altogether. Strength is in the leader who admits a mistake, in the soldier who lays down his weapon, in the nation that chooses to de-escalate when it has every means to strike. Strength is not noise. It is discipline. It is not muscle. It is meaning. It is not shown through destruction, but through the ability to build when others only know how to break. To those watching this tension unfold, let it be clear, the path forward will not be lit by the explosions of retaliation. It will be lit by the quiet but powerful steps of those who refuse to answer fire with fire. It is not about ignoring injustice. It is about answering it with justice that includes mercy. Justice that repairs, not just punishes. Justice that leads to understanding, not just retribution. The future belongs to bridge builders, to the people who dare to believe that peace is not just a prayer, it's a process, one that requires fierce intention and relentless compassion. It is not naive to hope for this. It is brave. It is not weak to work for this. It is defiant. Because in a world that tells us revenge is power, choosing peace is the most radical form of strength there is. And so when the missiles stop and the world listens again, may we hear not the echoes of war, but the voices of those who chose to connect. Let that be the legacy we leave. Not ashes, but arms extended in reconciliation. Not fear, but faith in our shared humanity. That is the true strength that outlives every empire.